You've heard stories of the Sierra Madre Casino. We all have. This story is different than the others. It's all in promise of beginnings and the ending.
When Dog fell in the Sierra Madre Casino, two died as one.
Да, от этой музыки просто мурашки по коже, честно говоря.
The voice in his head died with him, screaming, furious, enraged. But the voice was gone, and Dog was grateful. At least Dog was
был
dead,
благодарен.
and the voice needed to watch over him no more. In the moment before their lives ended, the wall between the two personalities fell. The two became silent as they saw the chain between them. Hunger and control are twin greeds, something Dog and his shadow had never realized.
Dean Domino, entertainer, singer, thief, had his last show on the Sierra Madre stage. The heist he spent over 200 years planning fell apart, just as the first, by underestimating his partner's strength. Not long after the courier left the villa, the lights in the theater shut off, one by one. Only Dean's hologram remained on the stage, singing silently to an empty room.
Здесь просто музыка тихо играет. Она есть.
Still, as consumed as he had been with its riches and ruin, the Sierra Madre had held him captive long ago.
Christine, scarred by her hunt for Elijah, and unable to let him go.
Да вы что, играет тут музыка, она просто тихая.
She never completed her mission. Nor did she stop to consider what had
Я
driven
ее
her to
слышу,
accept the
кстати.
mission in the first place. Obsession is another form of greed. A lesson that Christine never learned.
You've heard of the Sierra Madre Casino. We all have. The legend, the curses. Some foolishness about it lying in the middle of a city of dead. A city of ghosts. Buried beneath a blood-red cloud. A bright, shining monument luring treasure hunters to their doom. An illusion that you can begin again. Change your fortunes. Finding it, though, that's not the hard part. It's letting go.
Ну и чё, всё?
And so it was that the conflict between the New Canaanites and the Whitelegs was finally resolved. The courier's involvement had tipped the scale, shifting the fragile balance of power.
With Daniel dead, the Whitelegs soon overran Zion and drove the Sorrows and dead horses from the valley. The Whitelegs plundered all of the pre-war buildings the Sorrows had marked off limits. Their squalor an affront to Zion's natural beauty. By year's end, little trace remained that the Sorrows had ever made the valley their home.
Having revered Joshua Graham as a living legend for so many years, the dead horses found it difficult to accept his death. New Canaanite missionaries sought to remain in contact with the tribe, but lacking Joshua's authority, their influence dwindled. Still, as an expression of enduring respect for their lost spiritual leader, the dead horses helped protect the lands where New Canaanites settled. As generations passed, the dead horses came to worship a spirit of the land, a harsh spirit of divine justice. They called it Joshua.
Already weakened by several seasons of bad trading, the Happy Trails Caravan Company was devastated by the failure of its expedition. The New Canaanites never re-established ties with the caravan. Their experiences with outsiders near the Great Salt Lake and in Zion had been far too negative. Within 6 months, the Happy Trails Caravan Company was bankrupted. and dissolved.
И все благодаря
After
курьеру.
a long and troubled life, Joshua Graham finally found rest in Zion. In the end, his unswerving militancy had accomplished what the NCR's finest sharpshooters and Caesar's wrath could not. The new Canaanites took comfort in the belief that their brother's soul would again dwell in Zion at the end of days.
In the shadow of Daniel's death, those sorrows who survived the assault on Zion Valley mourned his loss, as was their custom. Word of Daniel's passing reached the new Canaanites several weeks later. They prayed that their brother would be well received by their Lord.
And with that, the
Чертогах
courier
Господа.
walked out of the history
Что?
of the tribes of Zion and back to the gathering storm of the Mojave wasteland.
Сюжетуль.
As it had been in the years before the Great War, Big
Давно
Mountain,
знаком
the Big
с этим.
Empty, became
с этим
home to one
клипом.
of the most powerful minds of the 23rd century. The courier who had been brought to the Big Empty became its new overlord, using its facilities ruthlessly and decisively when needed. Sometimes, science is more than a quest for discovery. It is a weapon to be used in the service of one with the strength to understand it.
The courier had scoured much of the Big Empty, although secrets still remained in the crater's depths. Perhaps that was for the best, however. Curiosity, while sometimes rewarded for its efforts, often proves to be equally dangerous.
The Forbidden Zone continued to be, true to its name, forbidden. No more robo-scorpions were sighted in its canyons. Big Mountain became even emptier, devoid of Dr. Mobius's proclamations forecasting the destruction of anything that dared possess sentience. Still, it is said he lived on in the equations inscribed on the floor and walls of the Forbidden Zone dome. But these equations were nothing more than thin white traceries of lines, not unlike cobwebs in the corners of a failing mind.
The sink was strangely silent, which it had never been in previous years. The lack of personality modules made the base lifeless and sterile.
As the courier ran through the X8 facility multiple times, the computers analyzed the test subject's movements. Rather than performing a superficial observation, they realized the subject barely knew what communism was, or even what a high school was. This confused them for a time, until the facility finally realized that its research had succeeded. So it let its cyber dogs out into the wastes to help protect small communities from physical aggression rather than communist propaganda.
The infiltration program in X-13 continued to scan for the subject and the stealth suit prototype long after the test was over. Frustrated and unable to find its lost technology, X-13 expanded its network of laser tripwires, sensors, and robo-brains out across Big Mountain. This glittering blue light beam forest cleanly bisected anything that entered its depths, slicing them into small segmented parts for easy disposal.
The courier left the brain at the Big Empty. A strange thing to say, but it was the truth. Brains are less important than they may seem. When the courier's body finally passed, the brain was saddened. It kept on, remembering the vessel that had once contained it. And so it burbled and bubbled inside its tank, smug that it still could dream its future without glands getting in the way. In time, however, it became so self-obsessed, it wondered if perhaps nothing existed except itself. It decided to test this by turning the weapons of the Big Empty against each other and seeing what happened. The answer is lost to history, as is much of the Mojave.
The think tank basement, filled with the lobotomized robotical frames of the doctors, now served as a graveyard. The monitors had recorded the battle in its entirety, including the think tank's final, shrill, terrified screams, whimpers, and pleas for mercy. They broadcast these humiliating last moments as a warning to anyone approaching the perimeter that other smarty pants were not welcome. The courier was the inheritor of the Big Empty, and there was room for only one will in the halls of the think tank dome.
There is an expression in the wasteland.
Вот такие вот дела.
It refers to those so obsessed with the past they can't
Ну,
see the
честно
present,
говоря,
much less
мне
the
Вьетнам
future,
речитатив не
or what it
очень.
is.
Ну, сюжетуль это шедевр.
Eyes like pilot lights, guttering and spent, as the realities of their world continue on around them.
Science is a long, steady progression into the future. What may seem a sudden event often isn't felt for years, even centuries to come.
The Big Empty lived up to its name. A hollow crater of failures of a past era. A last sad statement of the old world.
In the time following the Second Battle of Hoover Dam, Old World blues became more than a catchphrase.
It became a reality, a withering form of nostalgia for times long past.
It can be easy to see science as evil, technology unchecked as the source of all ills, all misfortunes.
With the courier at the helm, it was all this and more. Old world blues, new world misery. The two became one in the courier's shadow.
We could say more, but the stories in the Big Empty speak for themselves. Now armed with the transportal ponder, the courier could return to the dome at any time and crack open the secrets of the Big Empty one by one. The sink sat vigilant, waiting for its master to return, shoes covered in Mojave dust. Only one road yet remained, and it was one the courier had to walk alone.
Да, печально все очень. Блин, Эдика, наверное, надо было замочить.
The divide
Замочить.
erupted in fire, violent, red, as the last message of the two couriers arced into the sky. The missiles rained like spears down on the land, burning flags and communities alike, destroying all they struck. The history of the West was erased for the second time, thorough and complete, and America slept once more. At the end of the struggle, only one courier remained in the heart of the divide, the true courier, Courier 6. The courier tore the ancient flag of the Commonwealth from its cables and cast it over the corpse. Though whether done as a sign of respect or in anger for what had been endured to reach this moment, that is unknown. Interpretation is something best left to history, and only the surviving courier would ever know for certain.
Эд получил вторую жизнь. Нет. К сожалению, Эд единственный персонаж, который не получил смерть в этом прохождении, по ходу дела. А еще мистер Сорен.
As for the courier, he turned his back on his home for the second time and made his way back, navigating the treachery of the divide. Tunnelers and the marked men avoided the lone figure, as if recognizing the courier's right to passage, or out of fear. The courier walked until he stood again upon the edge of the divide, the last road he would walk before the second battle for Hoover Dam. There, beside his feet, was a final package from one courier to another. A footlocker bearing a gift and a message. But that message, it is something for couriers to carry, and for them alone. The lights flickered across the divide, reminders that the old world histories persist and find meaning in the present. It said, war never changes. Men do, through the roads they walk. And this
Война
road
всегда одна,
has
говорят.
reached its end.
And so the courier
Я хотел
who exceeded
съесть
death in the
его.
cemetery outside Good
Ладно,
Springs cheated
смотрим.
death once again, and the Mojave wasteland was forever changed. The courier, with the aid of Yes Man, drove both the Legion and the NCR from Hoover Dam, securing New Vegas's independence from both factions. With Mr. House out of the picture, the remaining Securitrons on the Strip were hard-pressed to keep order. Anarchy ruled the streets. When the fires died, New Vegas remained, assuming its position as an independent power in the Mojave. Preferring neither the best of the NCR nor the worst of the Legion, the courier was the man responsible for a truly independent New Vegas. He had removed Mr. House from power over the Strip and broken the influence of the NCR and Caesar's Legion in the Mojave wasteland.
Though some super mutants in Nightkin continued to journey to the legendary Utopia, they found little trace of its existence. Some eventually found their way to Jacobstown, but many wandered off into the wastes, confused and disheartened.
Without organized leadership, the remaining boomers slowly drifted away, leaving Nellis Air Force Base to be flooded by prospectors and scavengers. All of the boomers' accumulated knowledge quickly scattered, and their existence slowly faded from memory.
Buried beneath tons of rubble, the Mojave chapter of the Brotherhood of Steel was no more. Those few who were outside the Hidden Valley bunker when it was destroyed settled into new lives, or headed west to find a new chapter to join.
Their leaders destroyed by the courier, the fiends scattered throughout the wasteland. Without the organization of Motor Runner, Cook, Violet, and Driver Nephi, they were easy prey.
With no clear leader to guide efforts in Freeside, the followers of the Apocalypse lost control of Old Mormon Fort to local thugs and junkies. Eventually, using the followers' remaining supplies to manufacture drugs, the Old Mormon Fort quickly devolved into little more than a junkie den.
Travelers continued to stop by Good Springs Source for water on the Long 15, but rarely would anyone venture into the ruins of Good Springs itself. Those who did were almost always tourists, come to visit the graveyard where the courier rose from the dead.
After generations of being beaten down, the great Khans were finally broken by the courier. Those few who avoided the courier's wrath moved north into the wilderness of Idaho, where they tried once more to rebuild.
With Jacobstown's leadership destroyed, the remaining super mutants and Nightkin of the West scattered across the wasteland. Jacobstown withered away, its death going unnoticed by the rest of the Mojave.
Lily's long life finally came to a close in the Mojave wasteland. As the life faded from her, her last thoughts were of her grandchildren.
With the king dead and most of their gang slain by the courier, the remaining kings fled the area, never to be heard from again.
Despite their vigilance against potential attacks by the Legion, the citizens of Novak were no match for the courier. The motel and Dinky the Dinosaur were left vacant, a rare stop at best for travelers along Highway 95.
After Hoover Dam, the leaderless powder gangers at the correctional facility vanished into the wastes, leaving the prison empty. The correctional facility became another abandoned ruin in the wasteland, its carcass occasionally picked over by enterprising prospectors.
With Cook dead, the powder gangers at Vault 19 fell apart.
Those who weren't destroyed by the courier fled into the hills or attempted to work their way back through the Mojave wasteland. Few survived.
Prim, already torn apart by powder gangers, was dealt a killing blow by the courier. Though prospectors pick through the remains of the town from time to time, no one reestablishes it as a settlement.
Невероятное путешествие Д оборвалось, он лежит разбитый. Короче, я не успел прочитать.
The power of NCR's Rangers was broken for years. Their organization, so reliant on the wisdom and guidance of its elder members, became a shadow of what it once was to people across the wasteland.
Despite surviving the destruction of the oil rig and the loss of their comrades at Navarro, the venerable remnants were no match for the courier. They carried the secrets of their old lives to their graves.
And so the courier's road came to an end, for now. In the
Быстрая
new world,
достаточно
the Mojave
концовочка
wasteland,
получилась.
Fighting continued, blood was spilled, and many lived and died just as they had in the old world. Because war never changes.
Война всегда одна. Не будешь меня блочить? Да нет.